Good evening, and thank you for coming. Welcome to Hidden Valley Lakes Candidates Night 2023. My name is Jenny Boyer, and I am the current chair of the subcommittee of the elections. We're going to have our very talented Rich Gannon handling the logistics, and the also talented Bobby Kopp as our timekeeper. This evening, we have 3 candidates who volunteered to run for the 2 positions available of the board of directors. The candidates have been seated alphabetically. Each candidate will have the maximum of 3 minutes to introduce themselves. The residents of Hidden Valley have submitted the questions that they would like to have the candidates address. All the candidates have received a copy of these questions, and each question has been placed on a separate sheet of paper, and I will randomly choose 8. The candidates have the maximum of 2 minutes to respond to each question. The order for the candidates to address these questions will be handled alphabetically, and each candidate will take a turn at being first to respond. And good news to everybody, we want to keep this under an hour. So now with the general outline established, I'd like to present our candidates. Our first candidate is Jeff Fuel. Jeff, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Jenny. Yes. So I've actually moved into Valley in '98 originally. I was here for 13 years. At that time, I was on the architect committee. I actually chaired the architect committee for a few years. Then I was co-chair on finance. And then I was on the board also for about 2 to 3 years when I actually left because of a job situation. And that totally had changed within a few years, but I still stayed up in Mason area working, taking care of a ill mother and that for several years. And that's when I eventually moved back here in 2019. And I've been on the board for the past 2 years. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Grant, you're next.
All right. Nice to be here. Thank you all for coming. If you cared enough to show up, you probably already read my bio, but I grew up in the Valley. My grandparents moved here in 1991. As they got older, they left in '01 to move to more, sort of a assisted type place. At that time, I couldn't afford to live here, wanted to, but couldn't. I was away for quite a while. My family and I moved back here in 2017. 2 boys. My wife, we spend a lot of time here. We do a lot of work from home. Great to be back. I'm working for an insurance company in the area right now. Executive over there. Have a lot of experience doing budgets and all that kind of stuff. So that's it.
Thanks, Grant. Bob, you're up.
Thank you. I'm Bob Starks. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to all the volunteers that have done so much. The volunteers, employees, the board, everybody has done a lot. Rich Gannon, I understand, has even delayed his trip to Florida for a couple of days in order to be here. Jenny has put in weeks and weeks of work, as well as some of the other volunteers, and I'm sure we all really appreciate that. I've been a volunteer here in the Valley for about 25 years. I've served on the finance committee, the roads committee, the architectural committee, and I've helped on many, many individual projects and improvements around the Valley. Don Hicks, who happens to be here tonight, Don and I worked on rebuilding what had been a locker room over at the golf course and made it into a pretty nice bar. It doesn't get much use, but it's still a pretty nice bar. So after we did that, Bruce came along and asked us about remodeling a barn that they had built and put at the beach that nobody was very happy with the appearance of. And Don and I jumped in, and we suggested that building be sold. It was financially a better position to sell that and just start from scratch and build a new building. And so Don and I did that, and we've been friends ever since. one of the things that I worked on early on when I joined the board was I felt like there needed to be a cap on how much the board could spend. The board agreed, and we installed a 15% spending cap, which means that the board has the ability to spend up to 15% of our budget. After 15%, they have to come to the community and get approval for anything over 15%. And that's now been put into our articles of incorporation, which you, the public, voted on, and it can't be removed without your vote to remove it. I've been doing a number of things in terms of cost reduction over the past. One of the major things we did was to get an attorney, and we had found out that it was not legally correct that we pay tax on our roads, even though we had been paying them for 30 years. We got an attorney and we were able to eliminate the tax on our roads, which saved us about $180,000. It still is saving us $180,000 a year. At the time, we got back 3 years of payments that we had made, which was $565,000. Gave us the ability to pay off all the existing debt that we had at that time. Yeah, I've worked with Rumpke. I spent 6 months on and off with the Rumpke salespeople, where we went around to all different communities. We went to condo complexes. We went to all different types of communities to look at how the trash was handled in those communities. And because of the logistics here in the valley, we decided that we wanted to continue with the type of service that we had, but we requested that the trucks be smaller. And so we were able to work out a contract with Rumpke that was a 5-year contract that was at a reduced cost from what we had been paying previously. And they agreed to supply smaller trucks, which helps to make our roads last longer. But they're not currently using the smaller trucks. And the reason is because they had to, they were going to like a 5-day week with the smaller trucks. Maybe they're doing 5 days now too. I don't know. But at any rate, a lot of people were leaving their trash cans out over the weekend. And I was not part of this, but I understand that it was decided to allow them to go back to the larger trucks. And I think that's something that we might want to revisit again, because we're having a big problem with our roads. I see my time's up. Thank you so much.
Candidates, thank you for sharing your introductions. And now we're going to move on to the questions and answer part of the program. As a reminder, these are questions that have been submitted by the residents of Hidden Valley. I will randomly choose 8 of these questions to be answered, and the candidates will rotate the order in which the questions are addressed. Okey-doke. On your sheet, gentlemen, this is question number 4. During this time of continual inflation, what are your thoughts for controlling HVLPOA expenses? So this will start with you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I think we've been working on that for the past almost a year, at least 6 months, but really a year. I've been on the board for almost 2 years now, and as we discussed here at the board meeting, and if you look at the cost of inflation, period. Okay, the community here actually had spent, a lot of different expenses and stuff in our escrows throughout the years, and this escrow dollar has got to match, your savings. You got to have the actual dollars to justify it. And there were several major events or major projects that really went over. But, the community was looking at, or so, the committees and finance felt that they could eventually build this back up. Well, all of a sudden we hit this inflation. Okay. And that has really hurt. Okay. So now we are building and really trying to work very, very hard at developing methods of increasing our income. Some of that can be also with increases in fees and stuff, which we already had a year ago. Too many years this community has gone without any increases, and there was always kind of a thing of saying, oh, it must be good. I think things were kind of being hidden, not on purpose, but, you wouldn't see, people were not really keeping track enough of the escrow and the dollars that was maintaining it within that escrow. So as 10 years show up and you need that funds, it's got to be there. Well, too much was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I think, it's coming back. It's coming down right now. The fact that we need to do a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, Grant?
Okay, boy, I think this is a tough subject for everybody, and I thank the current board for doing all the work they have. Our income is fixed, right? We pay fixed fees, but we have inflation-based services. We have great security staff, great staff here at the office here, a lot of volunteers, but costs are going up. Okay. I'm a huge fan of the idea of prepaying for expenses in these escrows. You got to have those things over time. You got to make good decisions every day. There's no one issue that's going to make or break things. It's a daily battle. And these guys will tell you, Jeff just did. It's constant. You've got to spend a lot of time on those things. You got to make good decisions continuously to make that work. And things never do go according to plan. And that's, at any company, management will tell you, that's what the job is. What are we going to do? How do you solve this problem on a daily basis? And you may have to raise fees, if you think you're not going to lower some service level, or you don't want to dip into an escrow because, you got a road you got to pay for next year or whatever. So it's never as simple as just, well, we'll just raise this fee and all our problems will go away. It just doesn't work like that. And I'm committed to doing that work. That's what I do for a living for the most part. And again, I thank these guys for doing a great job. We've got to keep doing it.
Thank you, Grant. Bob?
Thank you. Yeah, so the question was, during this time of continued inflation, what are your thoughts for controlling expenses? And I've been kind of a leader in trying to find ways to reduce our cost. Technology does continuously give us new opportunities to rethink things, to relook at things. And that's exactly what I would be doing, is to try to find ways to maintain the high level of service that we expect, that we've always had. I do not want to see us have any less in the terms of the quality of services that we receive. But I would like to see if there's ways that we can further enhance what we're getting, but do it at a less cost.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, the next question. This is number 7 on your list. And Grant, you will be answering this one first.
All right.
And so here we go. Last year, many residents were upset about doubling the boat registration, books, boat slips, and golf cart fees. What would you have done differently to address this budget shortfall?
Yep. First, I do want to say I have not studied the alternatives that were presented to the board on that particular issue. And I do support that decision. I don't think the fees are nuts. If you look at what other communities have, what they're doing in that space, our fees are not terrible. They're not out of line. Happy to pay that fee if that's what we need to do to have the community work. And I would say I trust our elected officials made the right choice on that one. I don't personally know what all was looked at, but I'm not running because I don't trust anyone on the board, or I think they've done a horrible job or anything like that. Excuse me. I'm running because I have some skills I think can apply here. And if anyone wants a break, you don't know who's running when you throw your name in the hat. So I'll continue to do that and be willing to do that to try to take some of that burden off the community. But on that particular issue, I think I probably would have done the same thing. I don't know what all the other facts were, but.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that the replacement cost, the ongoing maintenance costs, and essentially all of the costs to repair and maintain the docks, as well as the future replacement of the docks, was all considered as part of what the rental cost should be. At least that's my understanding. I'm not sure that anything else could have been done differently, but I would certainly welcome any suggestions from anyone. But I believe the costs were done as fairly as they could, because eventually we have to replace all those docks. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, as both Grant and Bob talk about, the cost of replacing anything is up there. And, with the inflations, of course, you got to think ahead, and we're experiencing that why right now. But again, as they both have said, we are still way under what the majority of other places charge their fees by far. We're not even close to them. So, again, that's also our fiscal responsibility of the board, is to know, when we need to increase fees to maintain all the different services that everybody expects, that we provide here in the Valley. Thank you.
Okay. This is question number 12 on your sheet. Are you in favor of or opposed to wakeboarding on the main lake? That goes first.
Okay. I would really like to know more about wakeboarding. It's been years since I owned a boat, and I'm really not very familiar with the term. I know what wakeboarding is, but I would like to know, for example, what does the homeowners around the lake think? Are they seeing a lot of damage from wakeboards? What about our own docks at the marina? Are they suffering damage because of wakeboarding? Those are the kind of questions, the kind of information I would need to get in order to be able to really make a comment. Because I just don't personally have the experience with it. I've seen some people in the audience shaking their head. It's an indication that some of this damage may be occurring. So I would like to hear from, I kind of think it's the homeowners that may or may not be suffering damage that ought to be talking and telling us what the answer to that question is.
Okay. Jeff.
Okay. Again, back in '98 when I came here, we didn't have the issues you guys are having today. Okay. We're not a humongous lake. We're a nice lake, but we're not a Brookville lake. So as liaison of the Lakes Committee, they are actually taking on a task right now of looking at inventorying all the types of devices that are allowed on the lake. Because what happens is too many times you don't know what a new device is going to come out. The next thing you know, it's on the lake. Well, once it's here, it's too late. So they're going to actually try to develop a saying, what's on the lake, what's allowed. First off, it's going to be one thing that, is approved most likely. But they want to say, hey, if it's not in this list approved, you got to come to the Lakes Committee first before it could be approved. That gives you a little bit. So that can cut down on some of the issues that we're facing today. I've actually got some students. I'm at Elder High School with technology director, if you don't know. And so we're actually been slowly building this thing called a buoy that has electronics in it. And it's going to give us some wave measurements. Okay. And And I'm praying to God this thing gets done by the end of this month. It's been a lot of work, but you know, kids are many directions, but it's looking much better. That's going to try to give us, you know, the Lakes Committee, the patrol, they're going to do some testing, and they're going to see what the different wakes are. Okay, what the different measurements are, that people have an idea, because everybody can have a different, hey, that's not that bad of a wake. Oh, that's terrible of a wake. So, you know, everybody has their own opinion. And that may give us some measurement and some data to look at. Thank you.
Grant.
Okay, sure. I love the buoy, Jeff. That would be really cool. So, you know, I have wakeboarded on this lake, and I think wakeboarding itself is not really the crux of the issue to me. It's more the ballast tanks, those steel plates that come out and make huge waves and things like that. And you know, if you want to come over and see a washed out retaining wall, you can come look at mine. You know, you see people enjoying their pontoon boat. Some boat comes by making a wave this high, 20 feet away, and they're rocking like this. And, you know, so I think, again, our lake is not huge. We don't allow jet skis. We don't allow 60-foot cabin cruisers. You know, we're just not that kind of lake. So I like the no ballast rule that we have in place. I think it's appropriate for the size lake that we have. I don't know. That's where I'm at on it.
Okay. All right, this is question number 3 on your sheet. Do you believe that the HVLpoa current financial position requires finding other sources of income? Yeah.
Well, that could be a wide open question. Huh? Where are you going to find it? Huh? I'm sure so many people have tried figuring out this. You know, a lot of people talk about different fundraisers and whatever. And a lot of times to do these things in fundraisers, you got to actually be a nonprofit, have a, you know, and be registered as a 501(c), which actually the Fish and Game is talking about. They're actually trying to research that, because I think it would be a great thing for them to do for a lot of the different community events, clubs and stuff, things for our kids. Outside of that, you know, we have to pay, you know, all the different you know, things that, you know, cost in this valley. That's any community. Okay. So I really love to know more. I think that question also has questions on where they're trying to go for you to really answer it even more thoroughly. Thank you.
Yeah, like Jeff, I think the word require there could come with many meanings. You know, we need to be open to different ideas of what we could do. The garden club has a thing, you can rent a plot, and that's a little source of income. Ideas like that, boat storage has been brought up. You know, I think we need to be open to these ideas and study those things. What I'm not necessarily saying there is we need to have parking meters or whatever else might come up. I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of those kind of things. But, you know, other sources of income can also be pretty open as well. Right? We could have a special property tax for Hidden Valley. You know, I'm not going to be in favor of that, right? I mean, that could mean anything. So I would say I'm not in favor of more fees. I do live here. I do pay the fees like all of you. But we do need to be open to maximizing what we have without diminishing the quality of the experience. You know, you could sell pool passes to people not in the community. I'm not sure I'd be in favor of that. You could probably generate revenue that way, but you may diminish the quality of the experience for residents. So I wouldn't want to do that. So let's be open to the ideas.
Thank you, Grant. Well,
Yeah, so actually, no one has done more in that area, I think, than Rich Gannon. Rich is always trying to think out of the box and come up with some ideas. This past winter, we investigated the possibility of having an indoor driving range over at the golf club. Rich asked me to do a preliminary engineering study, which I did. I got up in the attic and measured up all the trusses. We looked at the possibility of raising the ceiling 2 feet. Actually, from what I understand, that this project it was decided to shelve it because we didn't anticipate a return on investment that would make it worth going to all those expenses. But still, you know, people like Rich are always thinking outside the box. And I would encourage anyone, if you have ideas, let's talk about them. But it's very difficult for a private community to come up with other sources of information. Thank you.
Okay.
I see our timekeeper.
She's doing a good job, isn't she? Okay, this is number 13 on your list. In the past elections, there have been a candidate or two who has agreed to having term limits for the board. Then nothing comes of it. Would you support term limits for the board members? Grant.
This to me first, okay? Yeah, you know, I think there are arguments for term limits, you know, fresh ideas, these kind of things. You know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The one thing that I can't get past with term limits is, what do you do when you have great representatives on the board? Are you going to kick them out? What if nobody's running against them? Are you going to force yourselves to take somebody who may be half-hearted into it just because of a term limit? So I think there are circumstances where you may regret having a term limit, and you have an automatic protection on term limits. If you get a bad person on the board, don't reelect them. It's a community, right? We elect people every time. I don't know what the safeguard is to say somebody's doing a really good job, let's eliminate the term limit and have them again. I'm not in favor of the term limits, and that's the reason why.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, I've thought along the same lines as Grant a number of times. However, you know, to follow up on what he's saying, I agree that the board must have 5 members on it. And some years we do not have anyone running except the incumbents. So, you know, you have no choice but to keep the incumbent, as Grant said. But I would like to suggest that the elections committee take a look at it. And if you come up with recommendations for term limits in some way, I would consider that, you know, as being something that we could do, as long as we have an adequate amount of people running that for that particular year.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Jeff.
Okay, so they have great, you know, thoughts, basically answers a lot of this, and you know, I'm going to have to agree with some of it, if not most of it. Okay, is this past year we've been working with the Lakes Committee, and it's been a deal where we're kind of working out restructuring committees and doing this in a method that actually can be transparent all the way up to the board. And one of the thing was term limits, and they're talking about term limits for the chair, you know, term limits even for committee members. Okay, but it's written to kind of just say, you know, take in account if nobody is actually going to take over those positions. You can't leave them a void. So what it does is within committee areas, when it's time for a chairperson to move, if nobody's taking his place, at least brings up the ability where it's got to be discussed. There is communication and discussion within that committee. Okay, it's not something that is, well, there's no change, nobody's going to talk. Okay, so that was a big thing. It's also how different committee people are brought into committees, you know, different. We've had a few things. You've had some great questions that the committee asked you, and now you're on the Lakes Committee. That was one part of it. Okay, it gives the committee members a chance to ask new members, and they get to know each other and understand, and it's a working ability, you know, develops. So that's somewhat the same thing with the board. Okay, but again, if there's nobody there, what are you going to do? So, but yeah, I think it's got to be structured. If you're going to do term limits, it's got to be structured so that it addresses when those issues do come up. Thank you.
Tough question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, this is number 9. How many hours a week do you have available to conduct board business? And are you available during normal business hours to answer emails and texts? To you.
To me. Well, I'm retired, so, I'm generally available almost any time. I do have a quick question. Can I have the rest of that time for later? I was asking the timekeeper back here. She's doing a great job. Oh, thank you. I'm done.
Okay.
Okay. I think a lot of people, when we're always looking for volunteers, period, whether it's a board, committees, clubs, everything. And majority of these people work. I mean, we're not all lucky to be retired, Pat. And, but you want to also make sure that that person is responsible for their job. Okay. So yes, we can all take care of emails now and then, and we can always mainly text. I always say if something was critical, text me. Okay. That's the best way, because even though I'm in technology, I'm all over complex and I may not get emails right away. There's times you got to shut down to take care of a teacher's that's handling 30 something students per period. Okay. So that's a responsibility that I have. And so I think you also have to understand that our volunteers do have other, responsibilities in the job. And if they do that, then when they're here working for us, they're responsible too. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Yep, I would echo that. I am not retired yet. Hopefully someday I can make it there. But yeah, I would echo what Jeff said. There are times where you have to pay attention to your career and be doing that. And evenings and weekends, I'm lucky that I work for a US only company. I used to do global companies, and you're on calls with Australia at midnight. I don't do that anymore. My evenings and weekends are mine now. So I'm committed to doing what it takes. I'll respond if I can. Emergencies, I have my cell phone on 24/7. But I'll respond as quick as I can. Maybe not during the workday.
Okay, thank you. This is question number 6. Should the POA be run like a business? If so, why? Who would you say are the customers? And what would be measures of a healthy business? There's a 3-parter for you.
It is. Yeah. Do I get 2 minutes for each one?
Oh,
Thank God. No. Okay. Well, to be honest with you, I think we are kind of structured as a business. Okay. It's the fact that it's not a community that you actually pay like cities do your volunteers, first off. So, but this is structured as a business. When you sit there and you look at your committees in your board with judicial, it's basically a small business structure. That is the way it's developed. That's why the bylaws were set up that way. So, at one time, several years back, there was different people here in the committee that were trying to actually turn this into a town, which was going to take a lot of things away from this committee, a lot of your ability to control things. And there goes your taxes and stuff. So I'm glad that went away. Customers, every POA member is the customer. Okay. So that's the main thing. That's what we're all here for. And that's where I believe the committees are the larger voice of the community here. And that's why the board really has to be responsible to work with committees. Okay. And that's good.
cool.
Coming after you. Storm.
Oh,
All right.
Must be the weather. Must be
Okay, where were we? Is it your turn, Brenda?
Yeah.
I think so. Hopefully I'm safe.
There you go.
Okay. We'll move on to Grant.
Yeah, no, I think this is another gray area where in a lot of ways, we are a business. We need to have budgets. We have employees. We do all those things just like a business does. But in a lot of ways, we're not a business because it's a community first. We are the customers, but guess what? We're also the managers, right? Every board member is a POA member. And so that's unique. Most businesses don't get to walk into the restaurant and decide how much they're going to charge you for your dinner usually, right? So in a lot of ways, it's not a business as well. There was a question about metrics. And I think this is kind of an interesting one to me. There's been a lot of talk about utilization and things like that, but I actually really don't like the utilization metric. I much prefer a satisfaction based, or what the marketers might call a net promoter score, kind of a metric where you're really less interested in exactly how much is that utilized, but what's the quality of the experience for residents. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. I didn't go to the pool in 2022. I like pools. I know how to swim. I was a competitive swimmer growing up. I just didn't visit it. But I would vote absolutely. I'm 100% satisfied with that pool. I would keep it every day. Our amenities are what make this community what it is. Without that, we're just another subdivision with steep driveways, right? So, that quality of that experience to me is really what it's about. Are the residents, are our customers, are we happy with the amenities that we have and what we're paying for them? And if that's an absolute yes, I don't care if they're ever used, quite honestly, right? If the community's happy with what's happening and getting enjoyment out of those things, then we've succeeded. And so utilization can lead you down what I call a little bit darker path, where you might be asking questions. Well, let's sell pool passes to people from outside the valley or things like that. So you got to be careful with metrics and the questions they cause you to ask and things that you want to think about. Is that my time limit? Yeah. So I think, surveying residents and getting out there and communicating is really important in terms of the metrics. The true metric is, would you tell your friends you need to move here? It's an awesome place to live.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, so just as a quick reminder, the question again was, should the POA be run like a business? Who would you say are the customers, and what would be the measures of a healthy business? In my experience, the POA is run like a business, and I think that's a very desirable thing. You are the customer of the POA. You also own the POA. And one of the reasons why I think it's important that it run as a business is so that we have transparent documents and records. We try to keep the finances. Jeff, as the treasurer, has done a very good job of keeping everyone informed of the finances. And again, like I say, you are the customer. If you're unhappy about something, you've got the opportunity to make it known what it is that's lacking. What is it that you need from the POA to make you satisfied? And a healthy business also has a healthy balance sheet. Right now, due to inflation, this is not a knock against the current board, but due to inflation, our balance sheet is less healthy than I've seen it in years. And, we do have to take some actions to improve that. And that's really all I have. Thank you.
Okay. This is the last question. And this is number 5 on your sheets. As a community, we have all invested our beautiful golf course. However, one of our biggest assets seems to be way underused. Of course, during golfing season, it's very busy. But what about off season? Do you see it could be a revenue generator during these off season times? And if so, in what way?
My first one's okay. I think there's things that can be considered, again, back to the ideas, whether it's restaurant hours with the clubhouse or this nice bar that we have or the indoor driving range, right? There's probably ways that the club could produce more revenue. I really think it's up to the golf course management to try to manage that property. And and get the most out of it that we can for the community. And I would encourage any residents that have ideas to bring those forward. We can look at those kind of things. I would not be in favor of turning it into an ATV off-road park or something that's going to be detrimental to using the property as a golf course. You could look at ideas like that as well, I suppose. But I think we ought to look at anything. Again, back to the fiscal situation, you got to be open to any ideas. You got to be flexible. You got to be willing to change next month. You really do, the way the economy is.
Thanks.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have looked at alternatives and we've kind of exhausted the ideas that we had. And we're very open to other thoughts and ideas. Anyone that's in the community that has ideas, share them. We'll see if we can work with them and do something, in that regard. The golf course, I think, does a pretty good job of delivering a very good product. The course is as well maintained, I think, as the people there can keep it. I believe the pro shop does a fairly good job. But I don't have a lot of firsthand information because I gave up golf a number of years ago and seldom get over there. But again, whatever input that the community would want to give would be very helpful to the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Jack?
As I said earlier, I actually left the valley for a while, right? And that was before you bought the golf course, but I stayed on the listserv. So I always heard different things in the valley. Okay. Still had friends here and stuff. And when it came up to the golf course, it was first thought was, guys, you got to figure a way to keep that. This is an incredible asset. Can you imagine somebody buying this, a builder, and what they would make it into it? Okay. That would bring down the value of everybody's homes. Same thing like the lake. The lake is an incredible, I don't live on the lake, but that's an incredible asset, even to my house that's 3 miles away from the lakes, maybe, So I have seen the past year and a half, things really getting a lot better with the golf course. Okay. There's a lot of things they need to do. I know a lot of high schools that come out here. And when they sat there and were able to financially take care of repaving all the different cart paths, I mean, there was a lot of people that were just commenting on that. It was fantastic. They're loving it. What's happening? That building has got limitations of what you can do. It's not you go to some golf course places and, they can have wedding receptions and different things, and our golf course is not big enough for that. Steve wishes it probably was big enough, right? But I think that's got to be looked at long term of what are you willing to put into it. And right now it's not the good time to put the funds into it. Okay, we'd love to be able to. It's not like it was like when Bob said, I was on the board too, when we got all those funds for the road reimbursements for the taxes, and we paid off this building. Okay. And did a lot of different paths, but the funds were there, and we're not having to worry about increasing fees. So that's not the day. So as much as I'd be open to any opportunity to hear, bring it on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. In closing, I would like to thank our 3 candidates, Jeff, Grant, and Bob. You have distinguished yourself this evening with your honest answers that have been posed by our residents. And I'd like to thank everyone who has helped put this evening together, the volunteers and the staff, all who make this community such a great place to live. Now, the ballots have been sent out, and some of you may have gotten them. If not, it's coming shortly. Remember, they must be returned to the POA office by Monday, April 17th. In closing, I'm telling you that this is available on Hidden Valley's website so you can all look at it again. Good night and thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.